Activity 74, as Earth rotates. Although the changing position of the sun throughout the day makes it look like the sun is moving, you know now that it's really Earth that moves. The rotation of Earth around its axis causes a 24 cycle of day and night. Challenge: what effect does the rotation of the Earth have on the way people measure time? One day night cycle is one complete rotation of Earth. Every 24 hours, Earth rotates, or turns around its axis. The axis is an imaginary line through the center of Earth from the North Pole to the South Pole. One complete turn of Earth is called a rotation. You can simulate this movement by slowly spinning a globe on its stand. If you look down onto the North Pole at the top of the globe, you should spin the Earth counterclockwise as shown in Figure 1 at left. At sunrise, where you live, you see the sun coming up on the eastern horizon as your region of Earth rotates into the light from the sun. Then the sun appears to move across the sky from east to west until it sets. Figure 2 below shows approximately where the sun appears in the sky during a typical day in most of the United States, in early spring and early fall. In spring and fall, day and night are about equal in length at 12 hours each. Using the sun to make a clock. You observed that the shadow from your sun stick moved in the same direction as the hands on a clock, or clockwise. You may not have realized it, but your sun stick observations are a lot like methods people used to measure time long ago. Researchers think that ancient peoples in Africa and the Middle East put sticks into the ground and scratched marks in the ground to track the movement of the shadow cast by the stick. This would have shown the passage of time during the day. That's just what a clock does. Eventually, people began to build structures for keeping time. As early as 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians built tall stone towers called obelisks. Some people think they used the obelisk's shadow to show the time of day. Sometime after that, sundials were invented, probably in many places by different cultures. Although we can't say for sure who first invented sundials, the earliest known sundial was found in Egypt and was made about 3,500 years ago. Like sunsticks, sundials use shadow to indicate the time, as shown in Figure 3. Each sundial has an upright piece that casts a shadow on a disc marked with the hours of the day. The shadow from the stick, or on a sundial, is shortest at noon, when the sun is at its highest point in the sky. The direction of the sundial shadow changes just as your sunstick shadow does. In the northern hemisphere, the shadow moves across the sundial from morning to night. The clockwise movement of the shadow is no coincidence. Inventors arranged the hands and hours on clocks to imitate the movement of the shadow and the hour marks on a sundial. Sundials are no longer used to keep time, but you might see them in special places in gardens and parks. Earth's rotation and time zones. Every day in the United States, the sun shines first on the East Coast cities such as New York and Miami. It takes about 3 more hours for Earth to rotate enough to move West Coast cities like Seattle and Los Angeles into sunlight. That's why sunrise on the East Coast is about 3 hours earlier than sunrise on the West Coast. Until the mid-1800s, cities and towns kept their own time. For each of them, noon was the exact time when the sun reached its highest point in the sky. This meant that when the clocks in one town read exactly 12 o'clock, the clocks in another town 50 miles to the east might have read 12:03. As train travel became common, these time differences began to confuse everyone. With each town using its own local time, scheduling arrival and departure times was very complicated, and the train engineers and conductors had to keep resetting their watches to the correct local time. Something had to be done to standardize the time of day. First, each railroad company used its own standard time for its train schedules. That meant its time didn't match local times or times for other railroads' trains. Passengers kept missing their trains, and trains crashed into each other too. The answer to this problem was time zones. A time zone is an area of the world where all clocks are set to the same time. The map in Figure 4 on the next page shows the time zones for the whole world and a close-up view of the US time zones. Earth is divided into 24 major time zones because it takes 24 hours for Earth to make a complete rotation around its axis. In 1883, all the railroads divided the United States into 4 time zones to make a single system of standard time that was known for many years as railroad time. When it is noon everywhere in the Eastern time zone, it's only 9 a.m. everywhere in the Pacific time zone. It's even earlier in most of the Alaska and Hawaii, and midnight in some other parts of Asia. And that is the end of my reading.